Good evening, friends. You're listening to the True Crime Witch podcast, a podcast that takes you into everything murderous, mysterious, and downright macabre with a forensic outlook. I'm your host, Emma, and this week, I feel like I say this every week, but I am going to try something a little bit different. This was a script I originally wrote for the YouTube channel that I write for, but it just didn't pan out. It wasn't what we were looking for, I guess, so I'm gonna use it. I might as well use it. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. "2020 has been filled with 24/7 news coverage of COVID-19, with many countries declaring lockdowns to help contain the spread of the virus. Other stories have also been dominating the news, such as the 2020 election, the Black Lives Matter movement, and the tragic explosion in Lebanon. But here at True Crime Witch Podcast, I like to bring you stories from the darker and unknown side of the world. So here are 5 news stories that you might have missed from 2020. Starting with number 5, we're going to start with FGM, or female genital mutilation, being outlawed in Sudan. On April 22nd, 2020, a historical victory for Sudanese women was won in almost complete silence. That victory was the war on female genital mutilation. April 22nd was the date that the new anti-FGM laws were officially written into legal code, banning the practice within medical or private institutions. According to UNICEF, FGM is still being carried out in 29 countries across Africa and the Middle East, with the UN estimating that 87% of Sudanese women have been a victim of this procedure. FGM is the total or partial removal of the outer female genital organs for a non-medical reason. There are different types of FGM, but they all strive to remove the clitoris and different parts of female anatomy. FGM is practiced for cultural and social reasons as opposed to being a medically necessary procedure. Many reasons are tied to preparing a girl for marriage or removing the ability of women to feel pleasure during sexual intercourse, which is seen to make her more faithful and prevent affairs. FGM comes with a long list of complications from pain, bleeding, infections, shock, and death, and they are just the short-term impacts it can have. Long-term effects of FGM can have a profound effect on young women and cause many health complications later in life that require many surgeries to fix, and that's also not taking into account the psychological aspect of FGM. The new law enacted in April 2020 is a huge victory for Sudanese women and women in countries where FGM still happens, as this will hopefully put pressure on governments to ban the practice. One Sudanese woman by the name of Insaf Ababs told the BBC, quote, "It's hard for me to say how my close friends and family of Sudan are feeling. Although I know how widespread the practice is, it's also very taboo. I've never spoken to female relatives about FGM, and I don't even know which of them have gone through it. So hopefully this new law will kickstart more countries to follow suit." Our number 4 story is the forest fires in Chernobyl. The nuclear incident at the Chernobyl power plant in Pripyat, Ukraine in 1986 has gone down in history as one of the worst nuclear incidents of all time. Everyone's heard of it. It's inspired games, books, TV shows, podcasts, all not just covering the effect of the incident, but the aftermath on the citizens of Ukraine, and when I think Chernobyl, I think Stalker. At the start of April 2020, reports were trickling out of Ukraine about forest fires that had been started in the 30-kilometre exclusion zone at the Chernobyl plant. Residents of Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, saw clouds of black smoke in the sky, prompting fears that radiation was making its way into the air. The soil around Chernobyl has had dangerous levels of radiation trapped inside since the incident in 1986. But with the forest fires, many fear that this radiation will be released and carried into the air, causing all new complications. These fears were confirmed when Yegor Fursov, the head of Ukraine's State Ecological Inspection Service, confirmed that the radiation levels had spiked since the forest fires had started. According to reports, radiation levels were 16 times higher than usual. Ukrainian authorities have said that they have a 27-year-old man in custody pending a full investigation. It's believed that he deliberately set fire to the grass in an act of arson, and he did it for fun. Although fires like this are known to happen when the country experiences dry weather, this case is believed to be arson. Ukrainian officials have played down the whole situation, what surprise, stating that the rapid decline in air quality is due to meteorological conditions and not radiation from the fire, of course. Whilst the fires are now said to be under control, more smaller fires within the 30-kilometre zone are still burning, and Ukrainians are nervously waiting to see what the rest of August and September brings. Number 3, we have Costa Rica allows same-sex marriage. Alexandra Quiros and Denaya Arara became the first same-sex couple to legally get married in Costa Rica in April of 2020. Costa Rica is the first country in Central Americas to lift their ban on same-sex marriage and finally make a step in the right direction. The fight to lift the ban has been long and arduous for the LGBTQ plus groups inside Costa Rica, who have been campaigning ferociously for many years in order to have the ban overturned. The country's president, Carlos Alvaro Quidesa, said, "No person will face discrimination for their sexual orientation." Of course, this has been met with heavy criticism and backlash from the deeply religious population inside Costa Rica. In 2018, an election was held, and a right-wing, deeply religious candidate ran for president, promising to ignore the pleas of LGBTQ plus groups and keep Costa Rica's stance on marriage strictly religious. Costa Rica is one of 29 countries that has legalized same-sex marriage, while overturning the ban by the Costa Rican Supreme Court was a landslide victory. There is still a long fight ahead to ensure that everyone worldwide can have access to marriage equality, not just marriage equality, but other equalities that people are facing within the LGBTQ plus community. But you go Costa Rica, you made a step in the right direction. I can only hope that other countries follow suit. Number 2, we have Felician Kabug in custody. Over the course of 100 days in 1994, 800,000 Tutsis were slaughtered, beaten and assaulted in Rwanda by members of the Hutu tribe. Fighting between the two groups had been ongoing in Rwanda since the early 1990s, with a group of Tutsis forming the Rwandan Patriotic Front, or the RPF, in retaliation to being exiled from Rwanda. In 1993, tensions appeared to have settled down between the two groups, and they were finally able to come to an agreement. The needless killing between the two groups stopped, and for a while it seemed like Rwanda could finally be united again. That was until the evening of April 6, 1994, when a plane carrying the president of Rwanda and his second-in-command was shot down. As these men were both Hutus, the member of the Hutu communities were quick to blame the RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, and they also, of course, used this to further their agenda for what would become an ethnic cleansing. If you're not familiar with the Rwandan genocide, pause this episode, go and look it up. I recommend the film Hotel Rwanda. I cried the whole film. It is truly one of the most darkest moments in human history, and I don't think it gets talked about enough. So, go and look it up. Any Tutsi person was slaughtered where they stood. Families were torn apart as husband kills their wives, and neighbours just turned on each other. Many Rwandans kept machetes in their house, and Hutu leaders made a call to action for these to be the weapons to wipe out the Tutsi people. Felician Kabuga, one of the wealthiest businessmen in Rwanda at the time, has finally been arrested for his involvement in the genocide. Kabuga was known to finance the militias and even helped to set up the infamous RTLM radio station that broadcasted messages of hate to the Hutus in Rwanda. The radio station would play messages such as "weed out the cockroaches" and further spread misinformation about the Tutsi people, spurring the Hutu to kill them. They even had live broadcasts about important and influential people being killed. This was a live broadcast of how many people were killed, where they were killed, if there was sound clips available. It was horrific. Phil Clark, a Spencer at SOAS University of London, told Al Jazeera News in 2020, quote, "The genocide could not have happened without Kabuga. He basically bankrolled the entire genocide. He basically produced, created, and funded the militias that carried out many of the largest massacres during the genocide. He also bankrolled the main hate radio station that incited many of the key massacres, and he also enabled the import of about 500,000 machetes, without which the killing spree would have been impossible." After 26 years of being on the run, French officials in the city of Anse-du-Son, I hope I said that right, probably not, they conducted an early morning raid on his property on May 16th, 2020. Officials aren't sure how Kabuga, a man with a £5 million bounty, or $5 million bounty should I say, managed to enter France unseen. He is set to face 7 criminal counts, including 1 count of genocide. Kabuga's legal team that has said that he is innocent of all charges, and that will be reflected in his court case. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 situation, it might be a little while until we hear the outcome of that trial. Nevertheless, I will endeavour to update you because I will be following this story quite closely. Now, the last news story that you may or may not have missed, I know it's recent, wanted to include it anyway because it's a bit fucking insane. Handing over dogs in North Korea. North Korea is a very polarising topic. Maybe one day I feel like I want to do like a whole deep dive into North Korea because there's a lot going on there. There's so much, and there's so much beneath the surface. So maybe one day in the future, in a couple of years, when I've not got so many things going on. Anyway, let's stop getting on a tangent. News story. North Korea is no stranger to weird news stories. If President Kim Jong-un is not feuding with the US president, Donald Trump on Twitter, then there's bound to be at least one news story coming from the country that just makes you go, what the fuck? The latest news story coming out of North Korea isn't about the threat that they've made to the US, nor is it about their weapons of mass destruction that they so proudly display in military parades. This one is about man's best friend. It's about dogs. President Kim Jong-un has declared that pet dogs are a decadent luxury and a sign of the bourgeoisie and must be handed over to North Korean officials, effective immediately. Now, Kim, there are many things that are a sign of the bourgeoisie. I don't think a dog is one of them. Not really going to argue with him. Some of these pets will be put into zoos, some of them will be put down, and some of them will be sold into the restaurant trade to be eaten. North Korea is no stranger to food shortages. In the 1990s, a famine known as the Arduous March gripped the nation as they struggled to provide enough food for its citizens. This was due to poor crop growth and the fall of the Soviet Union, as the Soviets had provided a lot of food and other resources for the North Koreans in order to support the growth of communism. Around 1 million dogs are eaten each year in North Korea, as it is considered a delicacy in the capital's restaurants. With the country also facing a food shortage due to the new sanctions being placed on them, it's likely that dog meat will creep into the black markets too. Factor in COVID-19 and environmental damage to the area, and North Korea are facing a very uncertain and tough time ahead. Whilst Kim appears to be offering solutions to the plight of his people, many people see this as nothing more than him consolidating his power and reminding the people that he is very much still in charge. With North Korea being a hermit state and limiting contact to the outside world, we rely on South Korea and other neighbouring countries for updates. North Korea has a very close tie to China, so they'll want to do nothing but spread positive messages about their ally. It seems that only time and South Korean media will tell how many dogs will be confiscated from North Korean homes, and what's going to happen to the North Korean people. That was this week's episode. Sorry it was short, but wanted to utilise the material I had at hand. As always, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, usual social media, just search for True Crime Witch. I shall appear. You can email me, truecrimewitch@outlook.com. I'll try my best to respond. I'm not the best at responding to things because I see things and I'm like, yeah, I'll get to that later, and then fatigue takes over and I'm like, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, and then before you know it, tomorrow's 3 days later and I'm too embarrassed to reply. So anyway, if you'd like to get early access to episodes and exclusive content and some cool stickers, sign up to Patreon for just $1 a month. It really helps me out. Obviously, I know with COVID and everything, if you can't, then it's fine. If you support just by listening and sharing, thank you so much. I couldn't do any of this without you guys. So, remember friends, stay safe and stay spooky.